Namaste. Welcome, beautiful souls. This is Sadhana, and today I'm here with a tarot deck, one that is certainly not new. I have been coveting it for a long time. It came into my tarot library earlier this year, and I find it quite funny that it is here at a time where I am so very interested in the game of tarot and the game of Migyate tarot, because the Tarot of Musterberg is designed as a game. And in the little white book that accompanies the Tarot of Musterberg, you have on one side the game rules. That is about 14, 15 pages. And then the other side is the cartomantic guide. And perhaps quite a useful little white book because many of the illustrations have been changed. While it is inspired by the Tarot of Marseille, it certainly in many cases doesn't look like a Tarot de Marseille, especially when we get to the pips. And in addition, many of the major arcana have been changed. I believe this is the third edition, and this current edition comes in a two-part sturdy cardboard box, and it is printed on the most beautiful paper with a luscious texture and antique looking background. And I believe that it was the colors of the deck that initially attracted me to the Tarot of Musterberg. The deck is based on a fictional story, which is quite entertaining, claiming that this deck has been around a long time as the deck that was used by the fortune teller at the Pennyland arcade, the Pennyland amusement park. And it really makes for a lovely story. And so let's go through the majors. I am feeling quite charmed by this deck. I've been playing with it a little bit. And just before I go on, I want to say that it does remind me a little bit, both in color and amusement, of Gergely Midnight Tarot. This is his Tarot 23. And while it does have white backgrounds, it is in the same sort of mood. There are some very priceless gazes, expressions on the figures in this deck, and I think you could compare the entertainment value for sure between these two decks. The Tarot 23 does have traditional Tarot de Marseille arrangement in the pip cards. This deck does not. It truly is a pip deck. And there is a walking stick in the left hand. The dog is at the front, not the back. There's a little mouse on the ground. The Fool is walking, not stepping off a cliff. And something quite interesting in the pointer finger of the right hand, almost as if they're pointing to where they are going. And then look at this magician card. The table is split. The magician somehow has broken the table with the power of their magic. They stand tall and proud and beautifully dressed. High Priestess. Look at these bottles in the foreground. I love this. She's looking quite stern. Looking to her left, so that certainly will play into readings. And here is the Empress, who also has some writings on her lap and gazing in the opposite direction of the High Priestess. And here is the Emperor. And notice we have these interesting birds that look a lot more like a duck variant than the eagle that we usually see on the shields of the Emperor and the Empress. And it is raining over the left shoulder of the Emperor. And there may be a spider crawling down the wall just up here. The Hierophant. The Hierophant is making the traditional gesture with their right hand, but the hand is not raised. And again, they are looking towards something. The Emperor was gazing at something as well too. So this is going to be a lovely deck to look at facings. Love the hand gestures in the Lover's card and the Chariot. So entertaining. We have just one horse driving the chariot and the horse looking back. It's funny, I made a comment about this. I just posted my Cancer 3 video for my deck and walk this year, and I was commenting about the ram that was looking back to where the charioteer came from and wondering if the ram was not quite ready to leave, or perhaps the ram was saying that the charioteer was not quite ready to leave. And here again we have a horse that's looking all the way back, and there is a fly or a bee buzzing overhead, ready to sting one or both of them. And here is Justice, and it almost looks like Justice is casting a spell of sorts, that this might be a spell book. We have a chicken under the table. There are coins on the table. Perhaps Justice has been paid. And here is the Hermit without a lantern, walking in an atypical direction. Beautiful robes. There are a lot of books in this particular deck, and I haven't looked at them up close with a magnifying glass. I don't think they are legible, but they're certainly well done. Wheel of Fortune looks more like a ship's wheel with the Sphinx driving the wheel, and these really interesting feet we have down below. And the animals that represent the 4 fixed signs we find down on the bottom of the card. Quite an entertaining Fortitude card. The lion in a rather strange position. And so you can see this is a deck to be taken lightly. It has a great sense of humor. And we have a bird resting on the bent left leg of the Hanged Man. Death is on a boat or on a sinking wharf. But I appreciate that. I like having water in the Scorpio card. That's kind of fun if you read the major arcana with astrological associations in that way. And I know there's more than one system of applying astrology to the major arcana. And here, instead of the figure in Temperance holding both vessels, they are holding one and pouring the contents into the vessel that is on the ground, which appears to be in the water. Cactus on the left, more of these birds, and the devil is renamed the creature. Looks a bit like a anthropomorphic cow that is holding a vessel. So what is in that vessel? A tower. This looks like it could come out of a children's fairy tale book. And the stars. She has a rather large vessel over her knee. And again, another major arcana looking in the distance. A different perspective in the moon card. Fun expression on the moon. We can see there is a pathway through the castle. The crawfish is leaping out of the water. The dog is howling at the moon. Here's the sun. And I love seeing this as a love card. Very happy sun. Nice romantic card in the tradition of older tarots, Italian tarot. And the Judgment card. So we can't see who is playing the trumpet, but it appears like there are lips in the cloud and some rather confused skeletons below. Here is another scroll. I'm going to have to investigate and see if I can make anything out on these scrolls. And I'm sure it will be nonsense. And the fixed, interesting look. So Leo is up at the top, and then here's Taurus, Scorpio. And then there's a strange little figure here. Perhaps for Aquarius. Might be a fish. And then there is a 22nd arcanum, the Siren. And this is an important card in gameplay, as is the Fool. However, if you are using this as a tarot deck, you may want to choose the Siren as the Fool. Usually when I'm reading a tarot deck, I don't put in extra cards. It's always an option. Once in a while I will. There are some decks that have just wonderful extra cards, and I do. So that is the major arcana. And the aces in this deck are just beautiful. They feel inspiring. And so let's begin with the red suits. It seems to be a term that is growing on me. The red suits referring to the suit of hearts and the suit of diamonds. The thing that will be a little bit difficult in reading with this deck is that the configuration of the minors is very pippish. And so with its unpredictability, I definitely will be picking up on other details and reading it exactly as it comes to me. Ryuko Shiparo, so this is a play on the creators of the deck. So Curio Co is the publisher. Ryuko Shiparo is the editor. And then here's the card I showed you already with the logo, Ludus Sinceritas Novitas. And I'll go through these quite quickly. In some cases, it looks like a playing card deck. And this deck was inspired both by the Tarot de Marseille as well as the game of Briscola. And I looked it up on the internet trying to get an idea of what the cards look like. And definitely the configuration of the minors matches closely to what I saw there. So a very fun configuration for the Five of Cups. And I definitely would read into this circular pattern here and allow the interpretation of the Five of Cups to speak to this circular pattern. Beautiful. Five of Coins. And we have a pattern here of upward facing, downward facing triangle in the Six of Cups. And this path that is normally clear in the Six of Coins in a playing card deck is blocked by the thorny vines that grow between. And in the sevens, we have an opposite configuration. So there is one that is growing up out of, and then the single one in the cups is at the base. The path is getting clearer here, not as tied up. Again, a kind of a circular story here. In the Eight of Cups, 9. This is looking a lot healthier. It looks like the growth is really making progress. And then there is the 10. Again, we go back to a circular pattern. And here are the black suits with the sword and the wand being held by a hand. In both cases being held by a right hand. And another deck I looked to see if there was a similar pattern was the Metelli Tarot, because the minors in the Metelli also sort of do their own thing. The pattern doesn't match the Metelli either. So I would need to get a Briscola deck in hand just to see if it was exactly the same or if it is its own creation. It wouldn't surprise me if it is. And there's something quite gentle about the wands. They're not huge. They are thick. You know, these look a lot like the one in the Ace, just a smaller version. The swords also appear not very intimidating. Same pattern in the fives with the sword and the wand facing upward. But in the Five of Swords, the 4 points go to the center, and in the wands, the energy moves away from the central wand. Something that might be important in an interpretation. And the 6 is similar, but again, opposite. And I don't think I have turned the cards upside down. I'm pretty sure they are all in their intended direction. So perhaps that is intentional, that the swords and wands in the minors face in opposite ways. And there is the 9 and the 10. So there's no circular pattern in the black suit minors. The black suits being the swords and the wands, the spades and the clubs. And here are the court cards. So the knave. And the knave of each suit, the only one that is looking at their object is the Knave of Wands. The other three are looking in the distance, not paying much heed to what they are holding. And we have a version of the coin in the ground beneath the right foot of the Knave of Coins. Sunrise or sunset in the distance of the Knave of Swords. And the knights all ride very chatty horses, much like the horse that we saw in the Chariot card. And I think it's quite typical in many tarot decks. I'm thinking of the Slow Tarot, which is one of my favorite Knight of Cups, that they look back, they remember. There's a nostalgia in the Knight of Chalices, and this one as well looks back. The other three looking forward, two of them quite determined. Really interesting hand gesture on the Knight of Coins. I suppose he is levitating his coin. And both the Knight of Wands and the Knight of Swords have their sword or their baton in their left hand. And this is something that I have paid attention to over the years, because there are implications, or there might be something you can read into the hand in which something is being held, whether it is the receptive or the active hand. It seems that all of the coin court cards have mastered the art of levitation. Queen of Swords balances the sword in the palm of her hand. And here we have another scroll, and something quite unusual growing out of the Queen of Chalices cup. And she is also holding some sort of document, it looks like. Queen of Swords and the Queen of Coins hold a wand in their left hand. And here are the four kings, all of them bearded, senior advisors. And they all appear as if they're having a grand time. Here is the Chalice family, all of them looking to the right. And here's the family of coins, all of them sort of looking to the left. I guess we could say the knight is also moving to the left. And in the suit of wands, the queen and the king face each other, as do the knight and the knave. Almost looks like the older brother is sharing some rather stern advice with the younger. And in the suit of swords, queen and king are back to back. The knight and the queen move in the same direction, the knave and the king the opposite. I like to have quirky tarot decks when I read at a party or at a function. And sometimes I also feel that even with a client, there is an occasion for a more light-hearted reading, especially when life just feels very serious at this time. What I want to ask about, this is being recorded on the 16th day of July, 2026, and we are still in the third decan of Cancer. And I want to ask about preparing for Leo season, the transition into the heat of Leo and the challenges that can arise with that. Sometimes I find the transition from the third decan of Cancer to the first of Leo to be quite challenging. So what is your advice? I said this felt like quite a party in the Five of Cups. And maybe this is about not taking the Five of Cups so seriously, which is something I tend to do. The circle feels important here, as if these cups are part of a gathering, that sharing perhaps is an important part of this message. So what is the transition from Cancer to Leo? It's about gatherings and enjoying this summer. It's about, if you read the fives, even in this kind of a deck, as challenging cards, perhaps this is about moving through those challenges with others and sharing together. And here we have the Queen of Coins. And I was thinking about simplicity and how she makes her responsibility or what she is managing seem so very simple. Is she offering us a coin? Is she receiving a coin? I feel like she's passing something on. And when I go back and I think about this Circle of Cups, I think about, well, maybe this idea of being open to receiving is very important. Interesting, it kind of looks like we're being pushed out of the water sign, pushed out of the water, ready and willing to move on, and nothing is quite organized like it usually is. If we allow everything to just kind of go where it wants to go and be where it wants to be, and if things are not in their perfect order, to be okay with that. Leaving things behind is important, and that as we go forth into Leo season, we want to be indeed moving forward. And if you've had challenges this past few weeks, to leave them behind, give yourself a chance to start anew. Of course, if these are major issues, they will come around again, but it is a time to go on, to go forward. So we could read them 1, 2, 3. If you're looking at them sequentially. But for some reason, I feel like they fit beautifully like this. I do like to put my first card in the middle. I know I'm a little unusual in that way, that the first card, most important card. And if we do that, then both the Queen of Coins and the Figure in the World card and everything in the World card is a part of the story of the Five of Cups. That there is tremendous support, and that if this does represent an emotional challenge, that we will move through it. And so can you take a reading seriously with a quirky deck like this? I think you can. I think sometimes when the pictures are drawn in unusual ways, and I'm still can't quite figure out what this is. To me, it looks like a quirky little creature falling upside down. Very, very fun. Please let me know if you are interested in a video or two about the game of tarot. What I like about the rules, as explained in this guidebook, is that it's quite simple. I'm sure I could figure it out without too much difficulty. I know I have tarot rules in other larger guidebooks as well, and one of the things that struck me was that the rules seem so very complex. And so working with this, I think, would be kind of manageable. It would just be so much fun to work with tarot in another way. So thanks for being here. Let me know if you have this deck, if you use it, what your impressions are. And as always, take good care. Namaste.